Hello students, through this video we will study part 5 of class 10th history chapter, the age of industrialization. So the next topic is the peculiarities or some unusual features of industrial growth. So some special features of industrial growth in India, specifically after 1880s, are as follows. Everyone, initially the European managing agencies were interested in export of goods like coffee, tea, minerals, indigo, jute, silk from India. Their interest was not in yarn. They were more interested in fabric. So initial cotton mills that came up in India, they produced coarse yarn, that means cheap, rough thread, instead of producing fabric, because there was a lot of competition from cheap Manchester goods that were coming into India, and Indian industrialists did not want to take that risk. And yarn that was produced in India, it was sold in Indian market as well as it was exported to China. Whenever we needed thread of a very superior quality, then it was imported. Then children, due to partition of Bengal in 1905, people were very unhappy with the British rule and Swadeshi movement started gaining momentum. That means people started boycotting foreign cloth. Moreover, industrial groups in India were pressurizing the British government in India to increase tariff protection. Now what does this mean? Industrialists of India, they wanted British government to impose import duty on foreign cloth that was coming into India. But do you think Britishers would have agreed to it? No, they did not. Moreover, export of yarn to China also started declining because Chinese mills also started producing yarn, plus Japanese also started exporting yarn to China. So, industrialists did not have a choice. Since yarn demand declined, they shifted from yarn to cloth production. So, because of Swadeshi movement as well as because of Indian industrialists producing cloth, cotton piece goods production in India doubled between 1900 and 1912. Moreover, children, industrial production in India further increased during the time period of First World War, that is from 1914 to 1918. This is so because British mills, they got busy in producing goods for the army, and as a result they were not able to import fabrics to India. And as the war continued, Britishers even took help from Indian factories to supply goods for war needs. For example, jute bags, cloth for army uniforms, cloth for tents, leather boots, horse and mule saddles, and a lot of other items. And as a result, sale of Indian cloth increased in India as well as in Britain. New factories came up in India and old factories had to run multiple shifts. That means they had to run in day as well as at night. So over these years, industrial production boomed. And after the war, Manchester could never regain the old position that it had in India, because by then industries in United States, Germany, etc. also got developed. Do you remember, children, we read in part 3 of the chapter that because mills came up in Manchester, the export of Indian fabric to Europe declined and our sale in India also declined. But during this wartime period, we regained that position. Our exports also increased and our domestic sale also increased. Topic 5.1 is small scale industries predominate. Dear children, despite the fact that many industries came up in India, by 1911 only about 5 to 10% of total workforce was working in factories. Rest of the workers were working in small workshops and household units. And cheap machine-made thread came up in market and it wiped out the spinning industry that went on in small domestic units. But the weavers of India were able to survive and they were even able to compete with factories. How did this happen? Why were majority of workers engaged in workshops and household units? This is partly because of technology technological changes. There were many technological innovations that kept on coming up, and they were cheap and they could be purchased by the poor weavers as well. For example, fly shuttle. This was a machine that could be fitted with a loom, that means a machine used for weaving, and as a result, it made the production process very fast. The whole loom could be maintained now or could be operated now by one weaver only. Dear children, not all weavers were poor in India. Some were better off than the others. There were some weavers who produced fine cloth which was bought by the rich, and some weavers produced coarse cloth which was bought by the poor. The cloth that was bought by the rich, their demand remained stable. That means the demand for Banarasi saris or Baluchari saris, which were expensive, never declined. But the demand for coarse cloth fluctuated due to famine and bad harvest. Whenever the poor people suffered or they were in times of crisis, then the demand for the poor fabric reduced. Apart from this, hand-woven lungis, handkerchiefs, saris were famous amongst all the sections. How was the life of weavers in India? Their life was very hard. Despite working day and night, they were never able to prosper, and they worked for very long hours, and their whole family worked. Thank you so much, everyone.